We are on the march. The empire is on the run. Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
We're live on the Alex Jones Show. We're talking about France. We're talking about global issues here. We have another terror attack foiled in France. Bear in mind, France has had, since January 2015, since Charlie Hebdo, 20 Islamist terror attacks, basically the equivalent of 20 San Bernardinos to differing extents in France. It's absolutely out of control. Now we have Gateway Pundit reporting, Islamists with bombs arrested in France, planned presidential election attack. French police were successful in stopping a radical Islamic terrorist attack that was planned for the upcoming presidential election. The two men were planning the attack. They turned to radical Islam in a shared prison. Once again, this is the radicalization process. It always takes place in prisons because they stick them together, they segregate into gangs, and anyone who doesn't show obedience to the Islamic gang is targeted, so then they become brainwashed, they become indoctrinated. The article goes on to say an Islamic State flag was found in the apartment where the two men were arrested. Anti-terror police made the arrest. It was set to be some kind of presidential election attack. They foiled it. There probably are more attacks in the works right now, because again, this is what happens when you invite this culture into your country. France is 7% Muslim. This is a huge problem now. It's not just a problem in terms of the existential threat, in terms of violent terror attacks. It's the march through the institutions, as the socialists used to call it. The more a country becomes Muslim, Islamism is a political system. It's not just a set of beliefs. They want to take political power. They want to impose Sharia law, and they're doing it to a certain extent in many of these European countries. And that's the real threat. That's what changes the makeup of an entire society. It's not necessarily, although it's tragic, 8 people getting mown down on a bridge in Westminster, London. That's a one-off event, and it's tragic and it's horrible. But it's about the march through the institutions. It's about what they call dawah in Islamic faith. It's a political belief system. It's not just a religious belief system. They want to advance Sharia law. They want to advance these incredibly misogynistic, anti-women belief systems which subjugate them and make them, they're treated little better than cattle. We saw the video out of Saudi Arabia, I think it was, or Kuwait a few weeks ago, where the slave maid is hanging from the window, what they said was a suicide attempt. And the woman's just filming it out of the window. They bring in slaves from Africa to do this kind of work. Again, no rules for employment whatsoever. They're beholden to their masters. There you see the article we had a few weeks ago, because of visa issues. So they treat them like absolute dirt, and that's part of their culture. And we shouldn't want to import that culture into the West. Absolutely horrific stuff. Thankfully, she survived with just a broken leg, I think it was. But that is how slaves, they still have slaves in the Islamic world. That is how they're treated in countries like Kuwait. You had another video out of Saudi Arabia, which shows the guardian of the girls in the school, teenage girls, who are only able to exit the building if their appointed drivers and male escorts are there to pick them up. If they're not, you saw the video, they emerge out of the classroom and they're whipped on the head with a stick to get back in. This is a Sharia law. This is how women are treated in Islamic countries, and they want to codify that through the march through the institutions to impose Sharia law. So it's not just about terror attacks. That's just a side effect. It's about society being overturned by these belief systems which are intolerant and completely contradictory to Western ideals of freedom and real, true equality for all. We'll be back in the next segment. Roger Stone is coming up. Breaking news at Infowars.com. Stay right there. We'll be back. We are live. It's the second hour of the Alex Jones Show, and we have Roger Stone, the one and only, live in studio. Good to meet you, Roger. Now,
great to be here.
Get into first what you just mentioned there. Bill O'Reilly looks like he's hanging by a thread at this point. People have predicted his demise for a while now. He's been sailing at the top of Fox News, 4 million viewers every single night, basically. We've had this recent controversy, but it's not what it seems. There's been this campaign behind the scenes, and now it's spilled over publicly. Media Matters. This is a group that constantly attacks us on a daily basis. They have people literally listening to the show every minute, transcribing everything. We know the origin of Media Matters. It's an Obama front group. They used to meet with the Obama administration on a weekly basis. They bragged about how they would write the editorial slant for MSNBC and all these big nightly news shows. This is not a media organization. This is a political operative group, and now they're basically celebrating the fact that they've brought down O'Reilly, as it looks like he's set to be at least let go by Fox News. What's your take on this?
Well, I think that's very accurate. Media Matters, of course, is a group of Clintonista apologists. They apologize for anything. They'll do anything necessary to cover up the various crimes of the Clintons. It is run by a misfit named David Brock, who in the day was actually a conservative operative, friend of mine, until he figured out he couldn't make any money on the right, so he shifted to the left, a total mercenary. It is reported recently that he suffered a heart attack, and he has not been seen or heard from recently. I have my own suspicions about his health problems, but I don't think they're heart attack related. In any event, they are crowing, I think, a little prematurely. As you know, Bill O'Reilly has been a cash cow for Fox. I mean, he is their leading ratings generator. I'm not particularly an O'Reilly fan on a personal basis. His book on the Kennedy assassination is completely and totally wrong. It's the conventional wisdom. By the way, Lee Harvey Oswald did it, and he acted alone. That's what O'Reilly thinks.
Didn't O'Reilly start off as like a muckraker regarding the JFK assassination?
He did, and there's some discrepancies in his own description, because he claims that he was in Palm Beach when the House Select Committee on Assassinations was seeking to subpoena a key witness in the 70s, and that witness committed suicide. O'Reilly said he was on the doorstep of the Palm Beach home where this witness killed himself, but unfortunately, proof shows that he was on the air in Dallas at that time, and no one, even me, can be in two places at once. In any event, I do think that that there is an orchestrated campaign of smear against O'Reilly. We saw this in the case of Roger Ailes as well, and it's very clear to anyone who watches Fox that they are missing the leadership of Roger Ailes. Ailes is the man who formulated Fox into a powerhouse, the powerhouse on the right, and has made Fox extremely profitable for Rupert Murdoch and his family. This same kind of campaign of half-truth and smear was utilized at Ailes, who picked up and left, and I think he got $30 million on his way out the door. So this is the high-pressure tactics. Now, some of you may remember Media Matters for America crowed about the fact that they had me banned at CNN, they had me banned at MSNBC. Little known was the fact that I broke the MSNBC ban last week when I was on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, Meet the Press Daily, a performance that I'm quite proud of. I thought he was entirely fair and professional, but obviously the boycott at MSNBC, as orchestrated by Media Matters, was broken. They don't seem to be crowing about that anyplace, but I just did. In any event, I'm hopeful that they will not get O'Reilly. It's interesting to me, if you see the demonstrators outside of Fox, they have all these pre-printed signs.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem very grassroots to me, Paul. Not at all.
The thing that comes up for me again and again is, you know, the left uses the fact that the right has principles. They use that against us because they don't have any. So it's always about the personal attack, isn't it? You very rarely see people on the right going after people on the left in terms of personal attacks. You've seen it more recently. I mean, you know, Chuck Johnson, Cernovich have said we should just use their tactics, go after people's personal lives, expose their sexual scandals, but it's not really been a tactic of the right, you know, over the past 10, 15, 20 years. But the left always resort to that personal, snipey attack, don't they? Because, again, they can't compete on a level playing field with just the political argument.
Yeah, I reject those. I don't want to attack anybody personally, with the possible exception of Anna Navarro, because she is so epically abusive to everyone she meets, waiters, doormen, gaffers, hairstylists, makeup people. she's a diva, and I don't like abusive people. But putting her aside, I agree with you. I'm not interested in the sexual foibles of the leaders of the left. I could care less. It's a free country. I'm a libertarian as well as a libertine. And what happens in people's bedrooms is their own business. I don't think I ought to be in the political realm. That said, however, what really bothers me about the left today is that their answer for everything is censorship.
Yeah.
In other words, they can't argue on the basis of ideas. They can't argue on the basis of issues. So they have to silence us. They're trying to do so through Facebook, through Google, through these kinds of campaigns being run against O'Reilly. Censorship to me seems to be fundamentally un-American. We allow everybody a voice. This is a flagrant, egregious violation of the First Amendment. It's interesting to me that the left has come so far. It used to be that they were the ones arguing for civil liberties. They were the ones arguing for the First Amendment. And now their answer is to silence us, to ban us. Banning anybody is a bad idea, in my opinion.
They are the new Puritans. Talking about the left and, the crazy stuff that they get away with. I don't know if you've seen this, but there's an MSNBC guest, if you can flash that article back up on screen, called in a tweet for ISIS to bomb a Trump building. So Trump, there he is right there. He called in a tweet. This is a counterterrorism analyst on MSNBC, Malcolm Nance.
Yes.
So there's a Trump tower in Istanbul. This is my nominee for first ISIS suicide bombing of a Trump property. This is a guy who's acted as an apologist for Islamist terrorist after every single major attack. He downplayed the Nice attack where the guy, plowed a truck through 80-odd people as just a grievance against a twisted society or whatever. He's openly calling for ISIS to suicide bomb a Trump property. Bearing in mind that, probably 10,000 people, innocent people, just going to work and doing their job, are in this building, and he's calling for that. Absolutely insane. New York Times, a few days ago, called for Trump to just leave ISIS alone in Syria. What is it with the far left increasingly moving towards this kind of hysterical pro-Islamist rhetoric?
And where's Media Matters for America? Why aren't they calling for this fellow to be suspended? Why is he still on the payroll at MSNBC? No, the left is completely hypocritical. They scan, you're absolutely right, they monitor this program, they monitor Media Matters America, every, rural radio broadcast that I may do. I know exactly who's opening my press releases and how many times. By the way, we know where you live too. It's creepy in a way. It's very, it's heavy-handed, it's nasty, it's personal, but those are the tactics that they choose to employ. Yet they turn around and they accuse us of being the abuser. In other words, in this entire past election year, what interests me is how consistently the left would specifically accuse us of doing precisely those things that they are doing.
Exactly, yeah.
Whether it is John Podesta saying, well, Trump and his associates are in bed with the Russians. No, John, it's you and your brother Tony and the Clintons who are in bed with the oligarchs close to Vladimir Putin. It's you and your brother Tony who are literally making millions out of your association with Vladimir Putin. Very clever, because you see it sends the mainstream media on a wild goose chase, examining whether Trump and associates have any ties with Russia. We don't. While ignoring the very real financial ties of Hillary's crowd with the Kremlin.
It is creepy. I mean, it's kind of stalker-like behavior where they try to find out any little tiny detail about your private life and then mine it for information. Like, I've got a friend who they were trying to get information about him to try and get to me because I refused to do interviews with a lot of these people. And they were going through his Facebook page, 5 years before, in 2012, when this was basically a kid. He was 18 years old, posting pictures of himself drunk when he was 18 on Facebook. They were asking him questions about that. They were asking him questions about his parents. This was Vice magazine. And it's this weird, creepy, stalkerish behavior that they engage in to try to sink people's personality, to try and demonize something they did 5 years ago that doesn't even relate to anything they're doing now.
Yeah, I had a perfect example of this. Was a brilliant young writer and researcher for Donald Trump named Sam Nunberg. Nunberg had some intemperate posts on his Facebook page 5 years ago, long before he came into the employ of Trump, that related to the Reverend Al Sharpton. And unfortunately, Media Matters for America dug this stuff up, fed it to a number of reporters. It was ultimately written. This caused Nunberg to lose his job in the Trump entourage. I'm proud to say that I was ultimately able to get Nunberg and Reverend Sharpton together. Sharpton is a Christian, and he is a forgiving man, and the appropriate apologies were rendered, and it's now a past matter. But it's a perfect example of how the left takes out somebody who's extremely effective. Sam Nunberg is one of the most effective researcher, writer, operatives that I know.
Okay, we'll be back with Roger Stone in the next segment. Going to talk about Chelsea Clinton and how they're trying to rebrand her yet again to shove the Clinton legacy, the Clinton royal family, down the throats of Americans. We will be back live, Infowars.com. Don't go away. We are back live on the Alex Jones Show with Roger Stone. Before we get back to Roger, just want to tell you about Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine. It's selling out fast at InfoWarsLife.com. We still have it 25% off while supplies last. That is in addition to the Easter mega specials that we have extended, but they will expire tonight. We have Survival Shield X2 still available. Again, we're under constant assault on a daily basis. Get the products. We're not funded by big fat checks cut by George Soros. We don't take money from Gulf state dictatorships like CNN to fund ourselves. We sell nutritional supplements, which people leave 5-star reviews for on InfoWarsLife.com. It supports the growth, the survival of this broadcast, and we really appreciate you getting the products at InfoWarsLife.com. Roger Stone.
Well, before we leave that, Paul, I've got to put in yet another plug for Brain Force, because I must tell you, my entire trip from Texas to Texas this week, and I've got a very heavy schedule, would be impossible without this supplement. I really find that it is both mentally and physically energizing, almost refreshing. So I urge anybody who wants to help us in this fight against censorship, and this fight against really totalitarianism that some would seek to impose on this country. You can help yourself and you can help us. Grab these great products at the Infowars.com store. I personally recommend Brain Force. I would not be without it. It really is a great, great product.
No, I mean, I did the whole show on Monday, you know, jet lag, 2 hours sleep, popped a couple of Brain Force right before. Absolute mental clarity. It works every single time. And
yes,
it's highly recommended. It's 30% off until tonight only at InfoWarsStore.com. Support us by getting the products. Roger, we got a few minutes left. Variety magazine had Chelsea Clinton on the cover again, and the tweet that accompanied the images, "Isn't she cool? Look at Chelsea Clinton. She's so hip and cool." People didn't buy it. Even BuzzFeed had to admit that people are just sick to the back teeth of the Clintons, full stop. What's your take?
Well, the real fundamental problem is that Chelsea Clinton is dumb as a brick and endlessly abusive, according to the New York Post. Evidently, the Clinton Foundation has had problems keeping employees because she is such an abusive diva. Now, the plan for her is to move her to a suburban Westchester, New York County district and have her run for Congress. If that happens, I'm highly confident that Danny Williams, the abandoned son of Bill Clinton, intends to move to that same district, which is 40% African-American, and will be throwing his ring in the hat for Congress in the Democratic primary opposing Chelsea Clinton. It would be a great forum for a discussion of how the Clintons have abandoned this African-American boy who is Bill's son, and how Chelsea, intends to, I guess, inherit that rough to $400 to $500 million that her parents have essentially stolen since leaving the presidency. This is a contest, Danny Williams versus Chelsea Clinton, that we can look forward to.
And what has she achieved apart from being a consultant for the Clinton Foundation? She hasn't actually achieved anything beside that.
But
right?
she was paid $600,000 for NBC when the parent company, which owned NBC at the time, General Electric, had a defense contract on Hillary Clinton's desk for approval, a multi-million-dollar contract. So she herself has been involved as a facilitator of some of these massive bribes.
John Ossoff in Georgia, the District 6 special election unsuccessful. The question people are asking, are Democrats ever going to win again?
Yeah, this was their opportunity. Kansas, the Kansas district was very close. It's really a shame because, in retrospect, I now realize that Mike Pompeo should never have left Congress. He should have stayed there. I don't think he's up to the job of CIA director. He almost demonstrated that definitively last week when he said that WikiLeaks is a Russian asset. No, Mr. Director, it isn't, and there's no evidence, and your friends there at the CIA can produce no evidence to that effect. But the Republicans even woke up to the Georgia district late, and they still managed to pull it out. I think the two great opportunities for the Democrats have been blown here. Here, they think they have Donald Trump on the ropes. He's certainly taking a beating in the mainstream media, although I would argue completely holding his own, and the Democrats still can't pull off a victory.
You've got an event coming up tonight, San Antonio. We got 30 seconds. Just tell us about that.
Actually, it's tomorrow night. I am tomorrow night in San Antonio, Texas, from 5:30 to 9 at the Artesa at Quarry Village, which is 300 East Bass Road, Suite 1143 in San Antonio. Organized by Republicans in Bexar County. We're going to have some speaking. We're going to have some Q&A. We're going to be signing some books.
Okay, sounds exciting.
Please come by.
To wrap it up, everybody turn up for that event. We will be back live in the next segment. We are live on the Alex Jones Show in the second hour, and I'm delighted to be joined by Andrew Torba, the founder of GAB.ai. Many people have been calling for an alternative network, an alternative social media platform. Well, Andrew stepped up and did it, and now he's facing intense scrutiny and backlash from that very same establishment. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. I hear you're now Paul the Great, according to Mike.
According to Cernovich, yeah. he's trying to build me up to embrace my own greatness, apparently. Embrace the mindset. That's it, yeah. Let's go from the beginning, though. For people who don't know what GAB is, what inspired you to develop it in the first place?
Sure. So I originally started an ad tech company, an advertising technology company called Automate Ads. We were working directly with Facebook, Twitter, and Google on top of their ad platforms. I was living and working in Silicon Valley, and I have some patriot friends inside of each of those companies. They gave me some heads up about some of the stuff that was going to start happening, some of the agendas that were going to start happening, and then I started to see it for myself. What really pushed me over the edge was when a whistleblower on Facebook's trending topics team came forward last May and said, yeah, we're actively suppressing and censoring conservative news, conservative sources,
and
conservative
that broke
ideas.
Into a huge scandal, right?
That was a huge story, yeah. And Facebook flew out Glenn Beck, and that made it all better.
They had to apologize, didn't they? And promise not to do it again, unlike Twitter, which will never do that, right?
Right. I mean, it was really just incredible because when you look at the Facebook trending topics product, it's used by over 1 billion people every single month. And majority of those people see that as what is news and what isn't. So you have this product that has this monopoly on communication and information, pushing a certain agenda and blocking out other ideas. That's scary. And I think conservatives, a lot of time, they like to complain about things, but they never take action. So I said, I'm going to take action. So that's when I started GAB.
I mean, we've heard it many times before. We complain about censorship constantly, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. And the comment is always, why not just start your own network? Well, the problem with that is you can't just start 1 million new networks and have 0 people on them, and because it would be completely pointless. But you tried to, from the outset, attract people to this new network so it would be a centralized focus where, controversial speech is welcomed. So how did you get past that roadblock of, having a big enough user base for this to have an effect and to appeal to prominent people to join?
Sure. So I think originally what we had, thought was like, okay, there's definitely a market opportunity here for an alternative, because what we see happening now is fragmentation of the social space. People are by nature tribal, and to assume that you can have billions of us all in one spot and we're all going to get along and play nice and play by one set of rules, I think is the wrong way to think. And I think what we saw as an opportunity is, hey, listen, right now conservatives, people on the right, Trump supporters specifically, are being shut up, are being censored, are being told to go away, are being suspended, being told their ideas are not of any value. So that right there is our first market. But I think, who's next? Is it going to be people in the center? Is it going to be people on the left? Who is next in terms of who they're going to target and what type of ideas they're going to attack? So to start, we had this waiting list. And the reason that we had to have this waiting list is because there was so much more demand than we even anticipated early on. And it was just bogging down our servers from day one. So we said, okay, we have to have a wait list. And that was kind of how we throttled it, and also built this exclusivity marketing and this idea of, well, this is cool and new and I want to try it out. And we've spent $0 on marketing. It's all been word of mouth. It's all been organic.
And the waiting list is still huge, right?
Yeah, we still have 250,000 people on the wait list. We have 160,000 users. We just turned 8 months old 3 or 4 days ago. So we're doing very well.
So the app was developed months ago. It's ready. Tell us what happened with Apple.
Yeah, so we have had an iOS app ready since December. We've submitted to Apple, I believe, 9 times now, and they've rejected it every time. And they reject it on the basis of objectionable content. Yeah. And this is a very subjective term. So what they would do is purposely seek out, objectionable content, searching for bad words or, all the words that we know as to be, I guess, objectionable, seek out those users, take a screenshot, and then reject us. And they would demand that we ban those users and we remove any content that is objectionable from the app.
I doubt they did that with Twitter, in which there is the most virulent racism on a second-by-second basis, right?
Right, absolutely. So what we did, we came up with this plan where we removed the ability to search in the app, and we removed the ability essentially to discover content in the app unless you were actually following other users. Yeah. We started Apple out with a fresh account, not following anybody. You can't search. You can't go out and find this type of content in the app itself. So what they did is they logged into our web app, went and searched, found those users, followed them on the test account, went back into the app, and then screenshotted it. Yeah. So they're holding not only our iOS app accountable to their guidelines, but also our web app now, and using that as a circumvention.
Those rules wouldn't be applied to anyone else normally, correct?
No, and they're not. I mean, you can go on Twitter in the iOS app. You can go on Reddit in the iOS app. You can search any objectionable term that you can think of, and you're going to find something. And that's the point. When you're looking for it, you're going to find it.
So, it's perfectly acceptable for people to tweet, kill all white people or assassinate Donald Trump on Twitter, which happens literally every minute of every day, basically, if you want to search for it. They have absolutely no problem whatsoever, but because you're coming at it from the angle of this is the free speech platform, they've got a problem with it. We saw Breitbart, they had an app that got banned by Apple. I mean, what's the solution? You got bashed in the media, by the way, for hiding the true nature of it, but you were just following Apple Store's rules, right?
Yeah, no, we were absolutely not hiding anything. We were being completely upfront. We developed an app to work a certain way, and all we did is removed our search bar. It's not like we changed the app in any dramatic way. We just removed the ability for them to actually seek out this content. And the point is that they still found a way, a workaround by logging into our web version to then follow and find those people and reject us on that same basis of objectionable content.
And there's Mark Cuban calling for that objectionable content to be removed from Twitter, which is actually a good point. One of the criticisms of GAB and these other new social media networks is that they are echo chambers. I mean, Twitter is a huge echo chamber for leftists. Up until just before the campaign really got started last year, there were very few prominent conservatives who were actively, directing huge audiences on Twitter. But there is this criticism that it's an echo chamber, that it's only people on the right, the alt-right or whatever. So how are you addressing that?
Sure. So what I would say is that every single social network is an echo chamber that we create and design ourselves. When you friend people on Facebook, when you like things on Facebook, you're creating and molding your own echo chamber on Facebook. You unfriend people that you disagree with or that you get into political arguments with or whatever. So by nature, by human nature, we end up creating, again, these own little tribes. Twitter works the same way. Who you choose to follow on Twitter is going to create what you're going to see in your content. Yeah. So my answer to that is that every social network is an echo chamber in some way, shape, or form. We're giving you the ability to create and shape and mold your own experience through what we see as individual liberty and user choice, versus us acting as big brother, big sister, and deciding what users should and should not see as a whole. We give you the individual the tools, to shape that experience.
And it's a free speech platform, but you have filters You don't just allow people to post anything whatsoever on there, right?
So it's not an anarchist website, right?
Yeah.
Like it's free speech within legal limits, right? And it's common sense stuff like don't break the law, don't dox people, don't post CP, things of that nature. Anything illegal, get off the site, right? Like take it somewhere else.
No, I mean, but they've tried to frame it as what was the term? Twitter for racist.
Twitter for racist.
That's the big line they went with. You've had
Twitter is the Twitter for racist.
Well, yeah, totally. It's just a different form of racism,
right?
Because white people can't be racist. It doesn't exist.
Of course,
to them. But there was a big Gizmodo hit piece. If you want to get that back up on screen again, the app was rejected because it was full of race baiting and hate speech. Again, I could write articles every single day, and I do, about race baiting and hate speech on Twitter. The amount of prominent people with hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter who have directly called for Donald Trump's assassination. We're talking India Knight, a leading writer for the London Times, one of the biggest newspapers in Britain. That's all acceptable. There's no moral panic over that.
Absolutely.
But as soon as you get a few people on GAB saying some bad things, you have to be banned.
Well, that's the other thing, too, is that a lot of those people were plants. They're paid trolls or trolls that come in and create edgy, like as far edgy as you can go, right on that line between breaking our guidelines. And then what people would do is try and find those people and single them out and say, well, look, I cherry picked 5 different users from this site, so that means this whole site is this, right? And that's what the media would do to us, is they would find 5 or 6 users that were posting something, I guess you could say, objectionable, or mean or whatever, and say, well, this is what the whole site is like. And that's just not true. We have a lot of good, honest, hardworking, normal, everyday people on the site.
Now, let's just talk about what stage. So the app's ready to go once it gets approved. You're still trying to work around that. How about video uploads? Because, of course, Twitter's got them now. It's a big deal for Twitter. How's that?
Right. So GAB is completely bootstrapped, right? We didn't take VC funding. We're not bowing down to advertisers. We're rethinking the social media business model. So instead of having ads, we have GAB Pro, which is a premium version of the product that users can pay $5.99 a month for and help keep GAB ad-free and get additional features in the process.
That's what I've called for with Twitter, because it's virtually impossible to get hold of anyone who works for Twitter to address concerns with, ban tweet censorship or whatever. I would happily pay
to not be censored.
Yeah, to not be censored, and just to have some customer service person at Twitter available for a small monthly fee each month. Right. I would happily do that. A lot of verified people would, so you've already got that on board.
It launched 30 days ago. We have 1,000 of our users that have signed up for this already.
Really?
And the other thing is we're rethinking the connection between content creator and audience. So right now, the advertiser, as I'm sure you know, on YouTube, they own all of the puppet strings, right? Like they are the puppeteer. We want to connect content creators like you directly with your audience and give the audience a chance to reward you financially with tips and the ability to subscribe to you for additional content. And that's where we're going with GAB TV, which is our video product and our live streaming product. So it's somewhat of a mix between Periscope, Facebook Live, and YouTube.
And there you saw we had Alex Jones active on GAB right now. I was active. I need to be more active. You've got Milo on there. You've got Cernovich is on there, correct?
Yep. Yeah. Cernovich is on there. Milo's on there. Milo just came back. You're on there, obviously. I think you've been traveling, so it's been a little rough.
So yeah, how do people join? I mean, there's this huge waiting list. What's the process?
So today, for the show, obviously, anybody that joins and enters their email into the waiting list, we're sending out invites all day. So if you sign up today, just enter in your email, look for an invite. But what I would say is we've been getting filtered by Yahoo, by Gmail, by AOL. AOL just completely blocks our invites. Yahoo throws them in spam. Yeah. Gmail puts them in the spam folder, or they put them in that the social folder. So if you just click let me in there and enter in your email address, we'll send out an invite. We'll be sending out thousands all day today. So anybody that signs up today, we'll send out an invite. You'll be able to create your account and claim your username.
And your waiting list is about to double, probably.
We'll see.
Now, let's talk about YouTube, because obviously this has been rumbling along for a good few weeks now. It started with the PewDiePie controversy, where he started to make edgy jokes about Nazism, dressing up as a Nazi, like, Charlie Chaplin did, or John Cleese, God forbid. The Wall Street Journal basically did a massive demonization hit piece against him, tried to make out that he was a representative of the alt-right and that he was a neo-Nazi. basically decimated his contracts with Disney and these other corporate partners. With PewDiePie, it's the fact that he's got 55 million subscribers. Now he's not controlled directly by a corporation. They're panicking about it. He did a video where he talks about how trust in media was declining, especially amongst young people. You know, so long as he's making videos about goofing off and playing video games, they're not really too concerned. But as soon as he started adding a tiny dose of reality, you can imagine the panic of some of those large media conglomerates. For PewDiePie, they see almost 55 million subscribers. Just by coincidence, recently on Twitter, he followed yours truly and Stefan Molyneux, which suggests that he might have been taking a few red pills. That's going to cause them to be nervous as well.
They're terrified. I mean, that's, the bottom line is that they're terrified. They're terrified that one individual, you know, 3 individuals between yourself, Cernovich, Stefan Molyneux, PewDiePie, you guys are reaching billions of people a quarter.
It's insane. Yeah.
Between 4 or 5 people. I mean, that's insane. You have where these 4 or 5 corporations that control all of media, all of Silicon Valley, they're panicking, and that's why they're panicking, is because the power is shifting from corporations into the hands of individuals like yourself, into the hands of the masses, then the people, and that's what they're afraid of.
You look at Rachel Maddow, whose ratings, to be fair to her, have gone up recently because of all the partisanship and you know, polarization. She gets about 2.5 million viewers per night on her show. PewDiePie gets that every day, if not more. Sometimes he'll get 4 times that, and he's uploading every single day. So it's not as if it's a once-a-week deal. Right. So if somebody like PewDiePie suddenly decides to change his content, which he has done to a certain extent, that is in direct competition with big corporate media. They've never had that kind of competition before. Now we see the demonetization scandal, which is an attempt to cut these independent YouTubers down to size, to make them dependent on other things, to discourage them from making controversial content, which is basically anything that runs counter to an establishment narrative. You were telling me before you came on about a new development with this.
Yeah, actually, I got a tweet about this about 10 minutes ago, and it's from Ethan Klein. He's a huge YouTuber. And
millions of subscribers.
Millions, yeah. He says, to give you an idea of how messed up YouTube is right now, I put Christian in the title of a new video, and it got flagged as religious and made nothing. Half of our videos are not running ads because they are marked as, quote, controversial. I truly feel like we have no place left on YouTube. And that's what they're doing. They're hitting the pocketbooks of the content creators, and they're forcing them with these ambiguous terms like hate speech or fake news or harassment, anything that's ambiguous and subjective that gives them the leeway to enforce at will, really. And they're forcing these people into self-censorship, right? So you have to kind of dance around the lines and tiptoe around glass when you're creating content to make sure you don't say anything crazy so that you can pay your bills every month, right?
Yeah, I mean, the headline, you can't even put Syria in the headline. Of course, that doesn't apply to CNN or Fox News. They're not demonetized. They had the restricted mode, which we talked about a few weeks ago. You go on my channel in restricted mode, which is what they're moving towards in terms of moving over to this Netflix-type model. Every single one of my videos is gone on restricted mode. Same for Stefan Molyneux, same for all these other people, some of whom aren't even that political. People like, you know, Philip DeFranco, who again has got millions of subscribers. He's a centrist. He talks about things from both perspectives, and yet even his channel, most of his videos completely censored in this restricted mode because, again, they're completely afraid of independent content creators just having their own opinions and not being controlled by megalithic corporations dominating the entire spectrum of acceptable thought and opinion. We'll be back to talk about it more with Andrew Torba, founder of GAB, on the Alex Jones Show, live breaking news at Infowars.com. We are live on the Alex Jones Show. We're talking to Andrew Torba, founder of GAB.ai. Andrew, we were just getting into it. You were banned from a startup directory. I think this happened before the election because they said you made people feel, quote, unsafe.
Right.
This was a Silicon Valley directory. How hard is it for someone who doesn't identify as progressive to get ahead in Silicon Valley, and tell us about what happened with it? Yeah,
so Silicon Valley is all about diversity, unless you are straight, unless you're Christian, unless you're male, unless you're a Trump supporter. They love preaching diversity unless you're any of those things. And being there, I was living there, working in the space for about 5 years. And, being there, you feel like you don't fit in at all. And you feel like you have to kind of keep your beliefs to yourself. Otherwise, you'll be blacklisted. And that's what happened to me. So I went to the San Jose Trump rally / riot. And I periscoped the riot out front and saw, people getting attacked and egged and the American flag being burned. And that's when I kind of woke up and I was like, you know what, I have to say something. And when I came out, I guess you could say came out as pro-Trump, everybody started, you're a racist, you're a bigot, I'm going to stop doing business with you. People that I respected, investors, entrepreneurs, very talented people that I had a lot of respect for. It was very interesting to see that side of human nature because of the divisiveness that happened during this election.
And you were just posting some screenshots of what people were saying about the election, and they literally thought that was a violent attack on them, right?
Right, yeah. So after the election, I think it was actually election night, a lot of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs that were in my network on Facebook were just freaking out on Facebook. So what I was doing is I was screenshotting the text of what they were saying, not including their actual names or identities, screenshotting the text of what they were saying, and I was just tweeting out like funny memes and trolling them essentially through Twitter, anonymously. And the one was something about, I said, build the wall. And they claimed that they felt like they were unsafe or threatened by my tweet. And they said that it was harassment, and I was making them feel like they were not welcome, or just they spun it in some way. So, again, for months after I guess, quote unquote, came out pro-Trump, for about 6 months, I was hounded on a daily basis and, attacked and called a racist and a bigot and Islamophobe and up and down the whole ladder. And this really kind of threw me over the edge. And I was like, you know what? Screw you guys. Like, I don't want anything to do with you. Like, just leave me alone, F off, whatever. And, then they tried to spin zone it into making me the bad guy and saying that I was making people feel unsafe. And they removed me from the network, the Y Combinator network, and, made a big deal out about it. But it wasn't a big deal to me.
So again, it goes to the heart of, the real intellectual intolerance is always on the left. Just, again, they love diversity until it comes to diversity of opinion, right?
Exactly.
All right, we're going to get back into it with Andrew Torba in the next segment. First, I want to tell you how you can support us, because we're constantly under attack on a daily basis, whether it's Media Matters, whether it's CNN, whoever. We're under constant assault, and we depend on your support. They are trying to remove our base of advertising. We had the ad roll debacle back a few weeks ago. As we talked about with Andrew, we had the YouTube demonetization, which has basically cut off 75% of our income on YouTube. Two massive, huge blows, but thankfully, because of your support getting the products, we have managed to survive and thrive. The Easter mega specials have been extended until tonight only at InfoWarsStore.com. 30% off Brain Force, 25% off Super Male Vitality. All those specials are available for a limited time only at InfoWarsStore.com. Get the great products, continue to support the growth of this network. We'll be back with Andrew Torba in the next segment, InfoWars.com.